Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Boy podcast. I'm Enrique, my co-host Vince, and we are about to bring you the best in the veteran community, entrepreneurship, and leadership arena. And Vince will introduce.
Absolutely. From Daytona Beach, Oak McCulloch is here with us in the building, virtually, that is, speaker and author of Your Leadership Legacy. Thanks, Oak, for being on the show. Let's just dive in. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I know you have choices, and I'm glad you invited me to come. We were talking before the show. I grew up in Northern Illinois. I played baseball, basketball, football in high school. Went off to the United States Military Academy. I was there for a couple of years, played baseball there. I didn't graduate from there though. I came home, helped my father, and ended up with an ROTC at Northern Illinois University, where I met my wife, by the way. And it must have worked out well because we've been married 35 years. So I think that's okay. And I got my commission in ROTC, and I did 23 years on active duty. And then I ran a food bank for a couple of years. And then now I'm here in Daytona Beach, Florida, doing recruiting for the Army ROTC program at Embry-Riddle.
That's amazing. We share some time in the Illinois region, both Vince and I. And so we know how cold it is. And in comparison to Daytona, you've made a wise choice there, brother. I tell you.
Absolutely, I did. And my wife and I, we have a rule that we can never move further north. I don't care if it's a block. We have to always move south. We can't move north.
That's a great strategy, I tell you. Now, you have this book that you author. So tell us about Your Leadership Legacy.
Yeah, so the book came around because of a presentation I've been given. So when I took up my last duty assignment on active duty, I ran an Army ROTC program at the University of South Alabama in Mobile. And I was going around talking to high school students and college students and some businesses, but mainly high school and college students. And I was asking them, so what do you want to do in life? What do you want to be? And they'd tell me what profession they wanted to do. And they said they wanted to be leaders. And I said, well, great, the world needs more leaders. I said, what does it take to be a leader? What does that mean? What do you think that is? And I get that deer in the headlights look. They had no idea what leadership was. They just knew they wanted to be one, probably for the wrong reasons, because they wanted the title, they wanted more money, that all those things that you get as a leader, but that should not be why you want to be the leader. So I came up with a presentation on what it takes to be a good leader. And at this point in my life, it really is, for me, my passion is to get out and talk to as many young men and women as I can about leadership. And so I realized, and I do that with my job here as a recruiter for Army ROTC, but I realized if I wanted to talk to more people than just in my general area, here in the state of Florida, I had to do two things. I had to write a book, and I had to get out on the speaking engagements. So I wrote the book, and I have had some speaking engagements, and I got a few more coming up. But really, that's why I wrote the book, is because I just realized that there's like your leadership void, and there is a void out there. I'm just telling you.
Oh, absolutely. And a great other podcast guest, which Army also, she gave us three R's. They want the leadership, right? They want the reward, but they don't want the risk or the responsibility.
That's right. Absolutely.
So she shared that with us, and that's the wisdom we pass on. But yeah, thank you for doing that with the younger generations, and definitely writing and cementing this book to pass on to future generations. Now, how did the pandemic affect this opportunity engaging with either ROTC high school students or businesses?
Right. So the high schools, I could tell you, 1999 or 2019, before the pandemic happened, I visited 36 high schools and talked to 5,500 high school students. The next year, when all this started, I got to 5 high schools. So this year it started to come back. I've started to go back to a lot of the high schools that I used to go to. Not all of them have invited me back, but a good majority of them. So I certainly saw a downtick in that. And, I published the book. I started writing the book on the 16th of February, 2020. I published it on the 12th of February, 2021, right in the middle of all this. So, I didn't get a whole lot of invites to come talk to people in person, but I did do some Zoom stuff. I gave my presentation and my discussion over Zoom. I did it for a Catholic university in El Salvador over Zoom, which was interesting. And then I've done it for a couple businesses. I did it for a business in Pittsburgh over Zoom. So we all make do. You adapt, you overcome, you do the things you got to do. But now I'm starting to get some invites to come in person. I was at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh in September. I was last week. I was at College of the Ozarks in Missouri, where I gave my presentation. Did one of the convocation speeches for the college. At the end of this month, I'm going to be at Doane University in Nebraska. I got an HR conference in September in Vermont already on the books, and I got a retreat in Texas. So I'm starting to get some speaking engagements lined up, and it makes me feel good that I get to go out there and talk. And at this point, it's not about money to me. It's about getting out there and passing on my message, because I really do believe we need to pass it on.
And, that goes to the word legacy, right? We get to a point in leadership where we truly understand that it's no longer about what you can get, but definitely what you can give. And amazing that the pandemic provided you an opportunity to go abroad, still here. A lot of us have seen that. I definitely have seen that. Most of my engagements have been abroad versus local. And we're seeing a change in the way that thing is working out now. So what's on the horizon for your leadership legacy?
Yeah, so, and just to go back, I had a master sergeant who worked for me, gave me a great quote. I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. Master Sergeant David Powell, who worked for me at the University of South Alabama, and I say he worked for me. He was a better leader than I was, probably. I mean, he was certainly as good a leader as I was. And one day we were talking about what we were doing and the importance of producing lieutenants, leaders for the Army and for the country. And he looked at me and he said, great leadership handed down from generation to generation is what develops great nations. And I thought to myself, wow, what a powerful quote that is. And the most powerful thing about that quote is that you can take that word nations and you can substitute anything you want for that. A company, a university, a hospital, a food bank, a sports team, whatever you want. And it doesn't change the meaning of that quote, because everything is about leadership. Absolutely, everything is about leadership. So I always got to give Master Sergeant David Powell credit for that, because that quote still hangs in my office. Every office I've had since then, that quote's hung in there, because what a great quote. But hopefully going forward in my leadership legacy is I get to go out and talk to even more people, sell a few more books. That's always great, but really it's to get the message out. And then I think I have one more book in me. I give another presentation on how to be successful, where I talk about setting goals and how to accomplish goals, and self-discipline and making decisions and all those kinds of things that we got to get better at teaching young men and women as well, because they're not making good decisions right now. But I hope to get out there and speak to as many people as I can, because like you said, it's not about us. And if you're a leader and you think it's about you, go do something else, because you're a horrible leader, and we don't need you as a leader. It isn't about you. It's about everybody else in your organization, and it's about your organization.
Absolutely. And now we're diving into leadership. We're so excited to hear more about this void and opportunities to fill it, which you're doing a lot of great things. Master Sergeant Powell, thank you for sharing that wisdom with us. And yeah, you can replace nation and say everything, and to include community, to include Absolutely. Your family.
Absolutely. And I always tell people, look, when I'm talking about leadership, leadership starts at home. I mean, you got to develop your leadership at home, in your family, and then your community, then where you work. Because again, everything is about leadership. And if people who don't believe that, I feel sorry for. And the other piece of that, everything is about leadership. Leadership is about people, period.
Right.
Bottom line, nothing else.
No common, no AI in there. It's all
Nope.
about human people. Yes, indeed.
That's right.
And, you mentioned humility there. Having you and Dave Masson Powell as equals, as far as being leaders. That's humbling to hear from an officer, in this case, military, that they are humble enough to say, he or she is my equal, in that sense of being a great leader. So how do you sharpen your saw to develop and thrive in your professional life, professionally, for your leadership skills?
Yeah, so I two things that I've made an effort throughout my career as a leader, not just in the Army, but as a leader everywhere. Number one is I try to read as much as I can about leadership. And I tell young men and women, read everything you can read about leadership. Read blogs, articles, bulletins, books. Some of it's a bunch of crap, but that's okay. You can learn just as much from that as you can from something that's really good, because you can learn what not to do or what not to believe just as easy as you can. But I always tell people, read autobiographies, because autobiographies of great leaders, not only do you get to learn what they did, but you can learn why they did it. They figure out what was going through their mind, what was the thought process going through their mind when they made those decisions. So I think that great quote, and I think it was President Truman said, all leaders have libraries. And I believe that. Leaders are readers. Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. I've never seen anybody who was a leader who didn't read a whole lot of stuff. So I firmly believe that. And the other piece of it was that I was lucky enough to have some mentors, and I listened to them. And I always tell people, you need to keep a leadership journal. And I had a boss who retired, a 4-star general, who told me that when I was a lieutenant. When he was a lieutenant colonel and I was a brand new second lieutenant, he said, "Oak, you need to start a leadership journal. And every time you're in a meeting with somebody, or you're in a conference or a presentation, or you read something in a book that really catches your mind, your eye and your mind, jot it down in your journal and just keep that." And I've done that ever since. And I believe that's huge. And I still do it today. I mean, I just had a presentation that I got to sit in on. I was lucky enough to sit in with the president of the university, and I took my journal and I made some notes in it. I think that's huge, because you got to learn from other people.
Well, Oak, I think that you already started your second book. If you ever considered that, talking about legacy and leadership, that is a great practice, because you truly encapsulate all that you're learning in one sitting, and you could probably publish that, right?
I probably could. My wife has told me there's lots of things that I have laying around the house that I've done that I should publish. But yeah, I think it's important. I really do. And I really emphasize it to all the young men and women that I talk to, that you need to start doing that if you haven't already started.
Well, that will definitely set in motion a true road for legacy, if someone could read that, coming from you. Now, you started with a quote that definitely inspired you, has inspired us, and will inspire every listener. But what advice did you receive as you was growing up in leadership, that you say, this is one that I will definitely pass on to somebody else, that you can pass to an emerging leader today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you again, it was a great boss of mine. And he never made it above the rank of colonel, although he should have, because he was one of the best leaders I've ever known. And again, I was a lieutenant, and he called me in his office one day. We were talking about some training event that was coming up. And he gave me a piece of advice. He said, every day, find something out about one of your soldiers and one of the people who are working for you. Not about work, personal. Ask them something personal. Get to know them on a personal level. Get to know the name of their wife, their kids, what they're doing, what his hobby is, what her hobby is. All those little things that really start to build that trust. Because if you honestly take some time to learn people, and they believe that you are actually interested, then you build that trust. And leadership's all about trust between people, because it is about people. And I had a boss later on who was a lieutenant colonel when I was a captain, and he retired a 3-star general. And I'd walk by him in the hallway, and he would stop and say, "How you doing, Oak?" And he wasn't one of those guys you could say fine and keep walking. He wasn't buying that. He stopped it, and he'd stand in front of you, made you stop, and he'd say, "How are you?" And he actually wanted to know. And then when I answered a couple of questions, he'd say, "So how's Kel? How's she doing? Didn't your son and daughter have a soccer game this weekend? How'd they do?" I mean, and he was a busy man. Not one time in all those times that he stopped me and talked to me did I ever see him look down at his watch like he had somewhere else to be. When I was talking to him, I was the most important thing at that point. And I learned from that. And I would tell the thing I would emphasize to young men and women who want to be good leaders is learn something about your people.
No, absolutely. And being authentic about it is really the key there, being impactful.
Oh yeah, because they'll be able to tell if you're not. If you're faking it, they'll know.
Right. Your cell phone's going, it's like, hey, they're not looking engaging. Eye contact is so important, to your point, not looking down at your watch and so on. So definitely some great pearls of wisdom. And now, Oak, how do you handle challenges either you faced or currently facing?
So I think a couple things that leaders have to do to make sure that you can handle some of the challenges. And we all have challenges. I don't care how good you are. I don't care what level of leadership you are, you're going to have challenges. I think number one is you got to have some self-discipline to do the right thing. In the back of your mind, you always have to be thinking, every time you're going to make a decision, every time you're going to do something, you got to think, what's the right thing to do? Because leaders do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because somebody's watching, although people are. If you don't believe that, you're naive, because they are watching. But that's not why you do the right thing. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And my father, who is just a mean old man, by the way, but I am who I am today because of him. There's no doubt about it. He told me as a kid, every time you're going to make a decision, son, think about this. Every time you're going to make a decision, think to yourself, would your mom want to know, would you want your mom to know what you're about to do? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and do what you're going to do. If the answer is no, maybe you need to rethink that decision. So I think self-discipline is key to facing challenges. But the other part that I think is huge that I've used throughout my career, both in the Army and out, is to use your team. Use the people on your team. Now, I got it. There's sometimes when you can't. We've both all been in the profession where we had to make decisions because people's lives were at risk and all those kinds of things. I got it. But most people, that is not the case, and they can take the time. And even us, even in our professions that we were in, most of the time, you could take the time to pull all your junior leaders in and say, okay, here's the challenge we have. Give me some ideas. And they'd throw you some ideas, and a couple of things happen when you do that. Number one, you will get some great ideas from people you never thought you would get a good idea from. And you will get some horrible ideas from people you thought were your stars. You never know. I had a boss who told me one day, Oak, a good idea is a good idea, whether it comes from a private or a general. And ... A bad idea is a bad idea, whether it comes from a private or a general. And I always, and he said, look, as a leader, then it's your responsibility to pick out those gems and use those. And what I generally have found in my life of doing that is that I'll take a little bit of this person's ideas and a little bit of that person's ideas and some of mine, and we'll throw that all together and we'll come up with a solution. What you've done now is two things. They trust you. You're building that trust again. Obviously, I'm a valued member of the team. The bosses asked me my opinion. Even if you didn't use it that day, you asked it. And maybe next time you will. The second thing is now it's not Colonel McCulloch's plan or solution, it's our solution, because they had a say in it. Now they got skin in the game. You'd be surprised how much harder they work when they feel like it's part of theirs. They had a part in that solution, not just somebody telling them what they're going to do.
Now, the challenges, and I love that approach of inclusion, right? That's true inclusion of the team, true inclusion of their strengths. And everybody has them, as you mentioned. The ... is the good and the bad, but everybody has them, and it would definitely strengthen the environment of a team when you include them, and that's a great approach. Now,
Well, the problem is, Enrique, is that if you don't do that, then you're only using your knowledge and your experience. And I don't care how long you've been doing something, you don't have all the answers. Sorry, I'm just telling you, you don't. And if you think you do, go do something else, because you never get to that point. Leadership is a journey. It is not a destination. You don't get to the end and all of a sudden you're this great thing that knows everybody, knows everything about everything. If you don't include the people, because they might be the expert. And I always use this example. My father's best friend when I was growing up, he worked at Chrysler Motor Plant in Belvedere, Illinois. And his job for 36 years at Chrysler was to put fenders on whatever vehicle was being made at that plant. Well, if you were running that plant and you had a problem with fenders, who would you go talk to? I would hope that you'd go talk to that man who's been doing it for 36 years. He probably knew there was a problem. He probably brought it up to somebody and they said, oh, just go do your job. They didn't even pay attention to him because they thought they had all the right answers. You got to use everybody else's experience and expertise if you really want to get to the right answers.
And that'll definitely get you through times of challenge, which undoubtedly create times of change. And so now, how do you strategize around times of change?
So first of all, I'm a firm believer that good leaders figure out what the change is going to be. You know, you don't manage change, you dictate the change. Now I got it. There's going to be times when that's going to happen, that you're going to have something comes up, you didn't see it coming, and you're going to have to manage the change. But I think, first of all, nobody likes to change. We are all creatures of habit, okay? Even organizations are creatures of habit. They have a memory of how things are always done. And it just drives me nuts when I ask a question, why are we doing it that way? And somebody will say, because that's the way we've always done it. Oh, it drives me nuts. That's just a horrible answer. If that's the way we've always done it and it works, okay, I got it. But just to tell me that's the way we've always done it. So first of all, the first thing you have to do if you're dealing with change is you have to convince people that it's in their interest to make changes. Because if you don't, they're going to go right back to doing things that the way they always did it. And the example I always use is, I always tell people in my audience when I'm talking about change and about people being creatures of habit, I said, if you don't believe me, remember how you shaved today. And I promise you tomorrow you will shave the exact same way, almost stroke for stroke. Remember how you put your shoes on. You will put your shoes on exactly the same way tomorrow. We are creatures of habit. We do things the exact same way because it's easy, because we don't have to think about it. So you got to convince people that it is in their interest and in the interest of the organization that we make changes so that we stay at the top of our profession, that we are benefiting from being the best at what we do. Because if you don't convince them of that, you're never going to get the change that you want.
Absolutely, because growth is being uncomfortable. Uncomfortableness, it creates growth, right? So
That's right.
Talking about inclusion, because if not, you're going to be the Kodaks, the Blockbusters of the world. So we definitely want to include them to create that growth and move to the next level. So definitely some great pearls of wisdom. It was great speaking with you, Oak. So folks that want to reach you to have a speaking engagement, to purchase one of your books or to engage you, period, how do they get a hold of you or your leadership legacy?
Oh, absolutely. So if they want to order a book, then they can go on Amazon. It's on Amazon, or they can go to my website. If they want a signed copy and they want me to do that, we can figure out a way to do that. They just got to go to my website. Then I've got my email address on there. My cell phone is on there. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I got Facebook page, professional Facebook page. I've got, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, although I can't figure that out. I mean, if you can figure that one out for me, good for you. I guess I'm just too old. I don't know. I post stuff on there, but that's not my strong. LinkedIn is really where I do a lot of my work. And I think that's how we linked up, got connected, was on LinkedIn. So absolutely. And my cell phone, like I said, is on my website. If you want to call me, you want to set up a Zoom meeting, happy to do that. I love to connect with people, and I would love to come talk to any organization that you have that you think would benefit from talking about leadership. I'd love to do that.
Well, I tell you, Oak, it's been a pleasure listening to you and talking to you today. And folks, we'll have Those links is part of the show notes and the video, so you can get a hold of Oak in case you want him to come and speak or just to get his book. So we'll make sure to have that on there. And if you want to reach the Leadership Void, the Leadership Void at gmail.com is where you'll send an email to us. If you want leadership topics for us to discuss, or you have a guest that you would like for us to interview, we would like to hear about it, and we'll curate that and see what we could do. But today has been about Oak and his leadership legacy, and we really appreciate you coming through and joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And a couple other things, talking about books and talk about opportunities. We have our subscription drive. And with that, you like us on our YouTube channel, The Leadership Void. You enter into a drawing to win this wonderful book by Scott McGregor, Standing O, the Salute Edition, Lessons in Gratitude. It's autographed too, folks. So listen, all you got to do is hit like and subscribe at our YouTube channel, The Leadership Void. A couple other things. On the 1st and the 15th, we do a radio check. It is an opportunity to check in our brothers and sisters in all the communities, our first responder military community, just to check in at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 1900 hours. We'll be there on LinkedIn Live. Check us out there on Radio Check. We could not do this without our sponsor from the home team of Round Point Mortgage Service Corporation. We thank them for being our sponsor, and we continue our legacy, having great guests on our show. Today was all about Oak and your leadership legacy. So thank you for being a great author, listening to what we have to offer, and sharing the wisdom around the world. Thanks all for being on our show. Happy Friday. Happy day.
Thanks, Vince.